Welcome to Contemporary Black Voices addressing the most pressing issues affecting Black America today. Our topic this week takes on a very blatant attempt by Republican governors and Republican-controlled legislatures to eradicate the teachings of Black history in their schools. The most recent example of this purging of the subject occurred when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis rejected proposals designed by the College Board for a new advanced placement African American Studies course in the state's public schools. The course examines the vital contribution of African Americans in literature, the arts, science, geography, and political science. In a letter sent by the Florida Department of Education to the College Board on January 12 stated, the content of this course is inexplicably contrary to Florida law and significantly lacks educational value. The course was designed to cover 400 years of African American history, was being placed as a pilot program in 60 high schools across the country. New York Congressman Richie Torres, when hearing the news, tweeted, "Florida has gone from don't say gay to don't say black." Florida is not the only state with this deliberate attack to dismiss all the great contributions blacks have made in this country to its development. The Republican-controlled Texas state legislature and the Republican governor Greg Abbott passed a law prohibiting state teachers from discussing topics related to critical race theory. It forbids teachers from being compelled to teach and discuss a current event or widely debated and currently controversial issues of public policy or social affairs, specifically regarding issues surrounding race and racism in the United States. A total of 21 Republican-controlled state legislatures have now introduced bills banning the teaching of critical race theory. And so that is our topic today, and I want to welcome back to my team, Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell, New York Times bestseller Caleb Alexander, and businessman, entrepreneur Chris Dawkins.
Thank you.
Our special guest today is Dr. Mateen Diop, an outstanding educator. He's been educating here in San Antonio for 25 years. Is that right, Mateen?
That is correct.
Yeah, 25 years, at affected all levels.
All levels.
And also in every administrative plus teaching position.
Yes, sir.
So you're very much aware of this subject that we're talking about.
I am very aware of it.
Yeah. So before we get started, Mateen, why don't you take a minute and tell everybody about your book, and then we'll get to the subject.
I'm trying to get on the New York Times bestseller list by Caleb.
And we're going to try to help you.
So this book came out in 2021. It's called The Making of a Madman, How a Former Inner City Principal Was Shaped to Serve Through Motivation, Adversity, and Determination. And what this book is about is my personal life growing up and how I became an educator, but the pitfalls and all that I had to go through in order to get to where I was, which I think made me a better educator. So it talks about motivation. It talks about the things that I had to do to stay motivated. It talks about adversity and the things that I went through and how I was determined on the other side to come out. So that's the making of a quote unquote madman. It also stands for Mateen Diop. So you read it, tell me what you think for yourself.
In your book, you define which of the, you changed your name,
Yeah.
and you specifically took these three. Can you tell our viewers what they stand for?
Absolutely. So I was born, people don't know, my birth certificate says Milton Avery Pollard. That's what my mother named me. But I was named after my father and who I never met, and some uncles, people that I'd never met. So as I got older and I became conscious, like Carl woke, and I became conscious of who I was, I said, well, I don't want to have this name anymore because I'm named after somebody that I don't even know, and it was supposedly my father I'd never met. So I had this angst about me that I wanted to change my name. Right. And then at the time, I didn't have any children. And I said, well, if I ever have any children, the name Potter is going to die with me. It's not going to go on to my children. Okay. So I went through this whole conscious period. I wore the X on my hat, and I went through all of that. And so I said, I'm going to change my name. At first, I was Milton X. And then I said, well, I can't go around and be an X. So I got this book of African names, and I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the book, and on one side, I'm going to cover up the names, and on the other side will be the attributes. So I'm going to look down the attributes, cover up the name, and see what I come up with. So I covered up the names and went down the attributes. And I got to one that said strong, firm, Mateen. Okay, that's me. That's my first name. And I said, one who submits to God. That's me, Ajala. That's my middle name.
Okay.
Got to the last one. Teacher, ruler, scholar, Diop or Jop, the way it's pronounced in Senegal, it's Senegalese. And so that's how I came up with Mateen Ajala Diop or Mateen Ajala Jop.
Sounds good.
Congratulations.
Senegalese author, Sheikh Anta Diop.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Yeah.
Congratulations.
I think one is left out of there from my reading of both your books. A black man dedicated to helping black boys love themselves and know who they are.
Absolutely.
And that's one of your big movements now.
Big movements. I started a mentoring program years ago. Mentoring now is the thing now. I started mentoring a long time ago because I was hip to Jawanza Kunjufu. I've heard of Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu. That's why I became, one of the reasons I became a teacher is I was reading his books, Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. Read those books while I was active duty.
Yeah.
And so I started a mentoring program while I was active duty called Simba Wachanga, which I still have today.
Right.
Simba Wachanga, of course, is an African word meaning young lions. And so I started that a long time ago, and that led to me starting my own school, which was the Young Men's Leadership Academy, which is still going to this very day in the San Antonio Independent School District. And I also started the Young Women's Leadership Academy, also in the San Antonio School District. So I've always been this gender kind of guy when it comes to education and separating the genders and all that stuff.
Well, I think that fits right into our subject today because what you've been doing for years is counter to what Ron DeSantis and the rest of these folks are doing. And so let's get into our topic. Caleb, everyone wonders about this term critical race theory and how it applies and how everyone's using it. Can you explain that a little to our viewers?
So in the simplest terms, when people talk about critical race theory, what they're talking about is the system of racism in this country. And so in the most simplest terms that you can put it, CRT is the study of systemic racism. And so I will allow Dr. Chatwell to elaborate more on that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So,
Our professor doctor. Yes.
with no papers in front of me. So, it was a legal theory. It still is a legal theory where there was an examination of racism in policies and practices. For example, systemic racism in hiring practices, systemic racism in the judicial system. And this all falls under the guise of critical race theories in terms of the principles associated with it. There's 5 principles. I'm not going to go into detail with those principles, but there are 5 principles, and they all point back to systemic racism, as you said, but we're looking at policies and procedures.
Okay, thank you. So basically we're saying black history is what they're trying to get rid of.
Right.
And out of all that statement that the Florida board wrote back to the college board, the one that got me has no value.
Educational value.
Educational value. Can you talk to that, Dr.?
And that, just reading that statement, it actually hurt. That's embarrassing. It's insulting to say it has no educational value. And I understand the history of blacks in this country. You never wanted us to read. You hid books from us. But I have to go back to my man Frederick Douglass back in the day, who taught him, who tricked white people into teaching him how to read.
Yeah.
So if you read his story, it's phenomenal. Frederick Douglass and how he tricked his slave masters' children to teach him how to read. So the history of this country has always been replete with, we don't want blacks to have anything. It's always been that way. So when you have these Republican-controlled states, they're just going to kind of keep that going. But we know that there is no U.S. history without Black history. There's none. So when Governor DeSantis is talking about taking away AP, Advanced Placement African American Studies, in the state of Florida, they still have AP U.S. history in Florida. So I don't know how you can even teach U.S. history without teaching Black history. You can't teach Abraham Lincoln without talking about Frederick Douglass.
That's true.
You can't teach Lyndon Baines Johnson without talking about Dr. King. There's no way. You can't teach America without talking about slavery.
That's right.
There's no way to do it.
Yeah.
So you can take it and try to legislate it out, but it's not going to happen. It's going to always be there because you can't have one conversation without the other.
Yeah, and I think you hit on one of the reasons they don't want to tell the true history, and it goes to slavery. If a white man teaches his son, your grandfather was the master, And he said, "Whoa, my grandfather was a master, and we have to pay for that because there has to be slave."
Right.
So we're taught that our ancestors were slaves. I'm older than all of you, so I can remember back in the 50s, in early 60s, going to school, especially the 50s, as a young kid. And if they had any pictures of blacks at all, it would be contrasting the black skin against the white cotton. And then the next thing they would have is showing black folks dancing. Why I've always, I know we're great dancers, but I always get turned off when I see them always showing us dancing, because that's what they had us doing in front of the white folks, and those would be the pictures that they would show you. You understand that?
No, that again, we're kind of relegated to entertainment. I mean, that's how it is today. Chris Rock gave one of his stand-ups. It was so funny. Chris Rock said, I make a few dollars. I have a few dollars in the bank, and I live in this neighborhood, and next door to me is Mary J. Blige, and Prince lives in the neighborhood. And he said, so, those are the kind of people that live in my neighborhood. He said, but my next door neighbor is a dentist. He said, he ain't no special dentist. He didn't invent teeth. He's just a regular dentist. And so Chris had to ask, how in the world are you able to live next door to me and Mary J. Blige and Prince when you're a dentist? And so I started thinking about that. So, but off Chris Rock, and they're all entertainers. So that's what we're valued as. We've always been valued as entertainers in this country. But we have to change that mindset ourselves. They're not going to change it for us. They can take all the history out of the lessons they want. We have to teach it for ourselves.
I agree.
And that's kind of what my thinking is on it.
Entertainers and athletes.
Entertainers and athletes, which are two in the same. They told LeBron, shut up and dribble. They tell him to shut up and dribble, but LeBron is out here doing major things in his community and for black people at large. So you can tell them what you want to tell them. But these young cats today, they're built from a different cloth. They don't really listen to that the way I came up. So cats like LeBron and Kyrie and all of them, they have their own mind, and they're using it.
When you think about basketball, every time the Spurs have a home game, they block off. They got all the police in San Antonio there, so that the white folks can drive in there, park their cars, go and see these black guys play basketball, get out and be safe.
Right.
And the people who are inconvenienced are the black residents, and probably most of them will never get a chance to go inside that stadium and see a Spur game.
Exactly. I have to go through that as well. When I come out my house and I see the Spurs game, I go the other way.
The other way. Sharon, you going to make a comment too?
This whole thing about critical race theory, aka the elimination of black history. I taught a course at one of the universities. It was a black literature course. Class was 50-50 black, white. And what was really interesting, some comments, the main comment that came out, this college student says, we never heard about any of this in school. Black students were saying it, white students were saying it. And so this elimination, or this attempt to eliminate black history out of history courses, out of literature courses, it not only hurts black students, it hurts other students as well.
But they're very selective though. Booker T. Washington's okay, but Marcus Garvey isn't. Dr. King's okay now, but Malcolm isn't. So they give you just bits and pieces of what they figure are careful people, even though when they were doing their thing, they weren't.
And I would even challenge the Martin Luther King being acceptable, because more and more of his, especially those letters from the Birmingham jail, is starting to emerge more and more as to his true thoughts. I mean, they were all true thoughts, but what he was starting to really start thinking deeper into what he was doing, to the point where he says, and I can't quote it, but basically he says, I have basically messed around and marched my people into a burning house.
Integrated our people into a burning house.
Yeah, I think, in all fairness, I know there's a friend of ours puts that up on Facebook. He constantly had the same thing, with I think implying that King had changed his mind. King never changed his mind. I think that statement comes after Cicero. When he went into Cicero, and those white folks showed what northern white folks could be more treacherous than southern white folks. And it might have been out of anger that he, I don't think he ever turned, in all fairness, I don't think he ever turned his back on integration, and that's something we discussed last week. So, Caleb, you want to chime in here?
Chris, did you want to jump in? Okay.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, as far as DeSantis, I like Dr. Diop took issue with the idea that African American history has no educational value, and by extension, he was saying that African Americans have no value, and our contributions to this country have no value. And so when you look at that, and the thing about DeSantis, you have people like DeSantis. DeSantis is a Yale graduate and a Harvard Law graduate.
Yeah.
And a former military officer.
And a JAG officer. You have people like Cruz, a Harvard graduate. You have people like Hawley, that it's a Harvard graduate. So these people, they know better. They know better. And they know about the contributions to African Americans in this country. But what you have is, you have an anti-intellectualism that's taken over the Republican base. And so you have the elites in that party who are doing what they've always done, which is to race bait and to use cultural issues. And so this issue, critical race theory has been around for the last 40 years.
Right.
But they're now able to use it because of who their base is. They're now able to use it as a cultural issue, which they've always done it. During the Reagan era, they did the same thing. It was the welfare queen picking up her check in a Cadillac. During the Bush administration, it was the first Bush administration. It was the crack dealer. So they've always used race as a wedge and as a cultural issue. And so this is the latest iteration of that.
And they've always taken black and put it next to a negative.
Always, yeah,
And-
always.
And
Always.
what we've done as a race is pick up that also. You black MF,
Right.
or you black SOB. So you got a negative with the word black,
Right.
and they equate them as the same.
So this idea of structural of not wanting to teach structural racism in this country. So they've taken this and they've transformed it into this wedge issue where they basically manipulated the whole thing. So now they have it where they have convinced their base that critical race theory is about teaching their kids white guilt in the classroom. That's what they've done. That's what they've boiled it down to. Critical race theory is about teaching your kids that they're responsible for slavery.
Okay, let's take a break here. When we come back, I want to.
I do have a question
Oh,
for
go
him.
ahead, yes.
But when we come back from our break.
Okay. What I want to explore is it wrong? Is it wrong to teach your kids things that'll make them be proud of themselves against teaching them things that may make them hate themselves? And what I want us to address is if I'm a white father and I want my kids to be proud of being white, that's another question we bring. Is it wrong for white people to teach their kids to be proud of being white? Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to address those issues.
Okay.
Ooh.